Hey everyone, welcome back to another Game of Thrones Season 8 character analysis. Today's video will center around the downfall of one of the biggest fan favorites, Daenerys Targaryen. This was a major heartbreak for countless fans for good reason, so let's take a closer look. In the beginning of Season 8, Daenerys' mission to take the Iron Throne took a back seat in order to defeat the Army of the Dead. Jon Snow bent the knee, but he was successful in convincing her to join the fight. Viserion being killed by the Night King was also a major factor in her decision. The season kicks off with the triumphant arrival of the most powerful army the world has ever seen. Winterfell was home base for what would be the most intense battle any of them had ever faced in their lives. Daenerys was absolutely needed for this battle. She had the biggest army and 2 dragons that could lay waste to a big chunk of the Army of the Dead. When it was all said and done, I think it's safe to assume that they won the battle thanks to Daenerys. If it weren't for her army, the Night King and the Dead would have likely overran the walls of Winterfell much sooner, and if it weren't for her dragons, the Night King wouldn't have been dismounted from Viserion. It would have likely been way too overwhelming with just the northern forces alone. When the battle was won, it was sad to see how underappreciated she was. I see why she was so bothered by Jon getting all of the attention, especially since she had just learned of his true lineage right before the battle began. I'm not saying that Jon didn't deserve the praise, he definitely did deserve it, but Daenerys definitely did more during the battle itself. And I was honestly pretty disgusted by the way Sansa treated her. Everyone in the north owed their lives to Daenerys, and yet they mostly still rejected her. One critique I have with Daenerys' strategy after the battle was the fact that she wanted to instantly march south to attack Cersei. It definitely made more sense to rest for at least a little while since the fight against the Dead took so much out of everyone. But anyway, that's when the next heartbreak happened for Daenerys as she watched Rhaegal get shot right out of the sky right before her eyes. To make matters worse, her best friend and most trusted advisor, Missandei, was captured by Euron Greyjoy as she fled from the ship.
Get to this gift. No!
Despite her losses, she gave Cersei one last chance for peace, and we know how that ended. After Daenerys had such an insurmountable edge when they arrived in Westeros, it's understandable why she was in such a deep and dark place after Missandei was beheaded. She lost the Greyjoy fleet in Dorne. She lost the Tyrells. She lost 2 of her dragons. She was betrayed by Cersei. Her hand was making critical mistake after critical mistake. She lost Jorah Mormont, Missandei of Noth, half of her army, and she is losing her romance with Jon Snow. She is also betrayed by Varys. And to top it all off, she found out that she is not the rightful heir to the throne and knew that Jon would be a much more popular choice in Westeros than her. It was a fall from grace unlike anything we have ever seen, and Daenerys knew it. We knew that she always had a bad temper.
I am Daenerys Stormborn of the blood of old Valyria, and I will take what is mine. With fire and blood, I will take it.
Please.
Don't ever presume to touch me again or speak my name.
Enemies?
Our enemies.
Your family, you mean?
When my dragons are grown, we will take back what was stolen from me and destroy those who have wronged me. We will lay waste to armies and burn cities to the ground.
Combine that with her state of mind after all of these losses, and the Mad Queen is born. The ruthless Targaryen was unleashed as Daenerys succumbed to madness. I know many of you think that this was an abrupt change in her character and are not happy about it, and I will get to that in a minute. After the devastation of King's Landing, we learned that this was just the beginning for her. She planned on spanning the entire continent to liberate people from masters. She even mentioned parts of Essos in her speech. Daenerys really did become evil in the worst way, and Tyrion decided that he had had enough. He took off his pin in a very public demonstration and was immediately arrested. Daenerys then made her way to the throne room to see her prize, the Iron Throne. In her mind, after a life in exile with an abusive brother, unspeakable horrors that she endured in Essos, an unlikely rise to power in Slaver's Bay, and a crushing her enemies in Westeros, she had finally earned it. Unlike the vision she saw in Season 2, she actually touched the throne. Her goal was complete, and it was probably the happiest she had felt in quite a while. Jon Snow then entered the throne room to speak to his queen. Blinded with pride and unreason, she was lost. Jon knew that Daenerys was too far gone to be saved from herself. He did the hardest thing he's ever had to do, and killed her. Drogon had a very powerful bond with Daenerys, and instantly knew that something was wrong. Drogon trying to wake her up was a soul-crushing scene. Drogon then turned his attention to Jon, and I fully expected Jon to be roasted alive. However, he then looked at the Iron Throne and completely melted it into a bubbling pile of nothing. As previously stated in the show, some maesters think that dragons are smarter than men. Because of that, I view this scene as Drogon understanding that Jon didn't kill Daenerys, the Iron Throne did. Her lust for the Iron Throne became the only thing that Daenerys had towards the end of her story, and she was desperate for it. Drogon understood this and symbolically destroyed the very thing that consumed his mother. He then took her body and flew across the sea, and this would be the last time that we would see either of them. Daenerys Targaryen's story is a true heartbreaker. Robb Stark was always my personal favorite character in the show, but Daenerys had become my favorite remaining character towards the end, which made it very hard to watch. It was all very reminiscent of Anakin Skywalker infamously turning to the dark side. But I gotta say, we spent so much more time watching Daenerys as a protagonist that the blow was much worse. She did so many amazing things for countless people that you could never imagine this being the end of her story. Now here are the cons. Unfortunately, many people, including myself, had an incredibly difficult time processing her decision to destroy King's Landing in real time. I remember instantly being frustrated and feeling that this was way out of her character. What's sad is that the only reason that this happened to such a big portion of the fanbase is because of how rushed it was. Even if they had made the final season 10 episodes and spent more time on Daenerys losing herself, it would have been much more believable. But it really felt like her character pulled a 180 on a dime in the way it was filmed. Let's face it, Daenerys going mad was always going to happen, and it has been foreshadowed for a long time. This can't be denied, but the rapid and sudden change of character due to a rushed final season tainted her arc. She has done horrible acts towards people in the past, but you can't argue that they all had it coming. Or at least they were her enemies and betrayed her. Imagine if in a longer season, Daenerys started doing much more questionable things before the assault on King's Landing. Let's say she did something similar, but on a much smaller scale. For example, let's say she executed a lord and his family when he did nothing wrong, but she suspected that he did. This would show ahead of time that she has lost her perception of what good is. It would also show that she was paranoid and without mercy, as she would kill the innocent family for the Lord's alleged crimes, much like she would eventually kill the innocents for Cersei's crimes. It would have made the destruction of King's Landing seem more earned, since we would know that she doesn't care about collateral damage. The execution of the Tarleys is the closest we will get to something like this scenario, but at least she gave them a choice, so it seemed a lot more merciful. Another problem with this season is that the emotional impact of Jon killing Daenerys should have felt much deeper. Another casualty of the rushed script, many people just didn't buy Daenerys and Jon's love for each other. We only saw them truly intimate for 2 episodes before things started falling apart. It honestly felt like they didn't really even know each other. In contrast, Daenerys and Drogo in Season 1 and Jon and Ygritte in Seasons 2 through 4 had time to build up and feel real. That's why the emotional impact of Drogo and Ygritte's deaths were much stronger. I'm also worried about the rewatchability of her story whenever fans go back to watch the series all over again. The nice thing is that we will definitely catch a lot of foreshadowing of her evil twist, but it will be hard to see all the good things that she does for 7.5 seasons knowing where she's going to end up. For example, one of my favorite scenes with Daenerys was her setting sail for Westeros at the end of Season 6. What was once viewed as a long-anticipated return home will now be viewed as the arrival of death and destruction for thousands of innocent people. But in reality, the Daenerys we knew and loved died the moment Jon told her who he really was. Fans of Daenerys can take solace in the fact that the last few moments of her life were perhaps among her happiest. I just really wish that the last 2 seasons weren't so rushed. It did a lot more damage to the story than the writers anticipated, and fans are definitely making that clear. If Seasons 7 and 8 were actually 3 10-episode seasons, I can't imagine how significantly the quality of the ending would have improved. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my analysis of Daenerys Targaryen's character arc. We won't soon forget about the Mother of Dragons. Her story was one of the most deep and thought-out arcs in just about any fictional story.